Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and today, on this third pillar of Exploration Thursday, we're going to continue our talk um, s- eh, tangentially about Dune, the release of the movie Dune, and of course the book series. But it being third pillar Thursday, we absolutely positively want to talk about turning our environment into a character in and of itself. Now, um, recently, after the end of this immense Kickstarter from N World, Level Up Advanced Fifth Edition, people have been raving about the out of the three primary books that were released, almost 1,500, 1,600 pages of material. There's a book called Trials and Treasures, and I was so happy to be part of the development of that because it really turned the third pillar of gaming. The first and second pillars corresponding with combat and social interactions, but the exploration pillar has been left apart in most tabletop gaming. And the development team said, "Hey, let's dive deep. Let's make these, nearly let's make this a fully developed pillar." And I'm so happy I was a part of that. And one of the reasons why I so love the the exploration pillar, and why we're going to talk about it today and what it has to do with Dune, is the fact that for me there are like three modes of thinking about, or three stances to think about exploration. And it's very easy to describe this in movie terms rather than literary terms. And because I'm a visual person, and I think many of you will understand this. So when talking about exploration, exploration itself is such a huge umbrella that I think even many of us that are tabletop RPG enthusiasts might not be on the same page. It's kind of like it's like having the alignment argument, right? And everybody has their own interpretations, and unfortunately, like the alignment argument or the hit point argument or the armor class argument, etc., it starts these. We have these expectations that we've developed, and even personal experiences involved in it. And sometimes we might not be on the same page, even though we're all enthusiasts of the thing. So when it comes to, and I'm going to use Lord of the Rings in many ways as well to make a comparison for those who haven't seen the Dune movie, or maybe their stances in it don't quite line up with mine. So for me, when we talk about the exploration, one part of exploration is the extremely zoomed out, barely can see our protagonist in the background exploration. It is the this is what this region looks like and feels like. And um, oftentimes, because we are creatives, we love to have these enchanted, dangerous, desolate, post-apocalyptic, wild magic zones, lifeless zones. And the idea that our characters are traveling through these without very much to worry about, um, or without having any like mechanical repercussions for traveling through a desolate region. Maybe pestilence is extremely common here, or there's barely any food and water, or um, I don't know, the black sand has been carved into shards of glass that sweep through the region, or something of that nature. And I feel like, other than descriptive, and there's nothing wrong with describing a long journey and kind of hand waving from getting from one end to the other. I think some of us that create these lethal locations would like to have something happen along the way. And so having some kind of tools to be able to do that, I think, is pretty important. So in advanced fifth edition, which I will be referring to as A5E, and original fifth edition O5E, we have some but we don't have very many. Now, this concept was actually brought up long before Level Up existed. There is a fifth edition, um, fifth edition mutation, if you will, massaging on for a Lord of the Rings Adventures in Middle Earth version, and they had a bit of a like journey mechanism involved in it. Yeah. Ouch. And I agree. Wayne's like, Dune was fantastic. Hope I'm alive in 2 years to see the sequel. Digging out my 2E Wilderness Survival Guide. Yeah, but that has come back up again. The second edition Wilderness Survival Guide. Um, and my game's wilderness did matter. And in some ways, it's weird because I think as gamers, sometimes we have this idea in our head that like, okay, our players need to get from A to B, and when things happen in between them getting from A to B, it's it's an annoyance, it's a resource drain rather than it being the story itself, right? Because in Lord of the Rings, our protagonists, our characters have to get to, we got to dump the magic item into the mountain, into the lava and destroy it. The adventure itself, the module itself, the going through the rooms of the dungeon itself is the travel rather than our mindset being that, well, to go from village to, I don't know, wizard tower, and then to have air quotes random encounters happen along the way. Well, that's just stopping us from getting to the end destination where we want them to go into the front door of the dungeon, as opposed to thinking of the adventure, the travel itself being a complete adventure unto itself. um, and what I'm really proud of in Advanced Fifth Edition is we were able to come up with what are known as journey roles. And a journey role is like, what are you doing on your travel? Like what skills are you bringing to the table, and what are you engaged in? And we decided not to relate them to any particular character class. So along a journey, you can do things like scout ahead or track. You can track, maybe you're tracking prey or tracking escaped convicts or something like that. There's a chronicler who might use a map, or they might have like a diary and they're chronicling their adventures, the things that they're seeing. There are people you can rob people on your way, or busk, which is like entertaining passersby. You can engage in gossip. So there are these journey roles, and many of them correspond to one or more skills that characters have, and then use those along the way. And depending on how well or how low they roll, something may happen. They might gain some kind of boon or discover something. And I think it's easy. That is a very easy thing to port over. And mind you, doesn't really matter how long the travel is. We can we can focus in on one or a few days of a long journey to see what our intrepid heroes are doing. And that's very zoomed out. I mean, if we take a look at Dune, um, the director has a keen and the director and the cinematographer had a keen eye for showing just how expansive this Dune world was versus the little tiny specks of the people, and how dangerous it is. I think something else that we should do, um, a thought exercise, is to not to fold our arms and harumph when we're thinking of some of these um, environmental locations. So if we take a look at, for example, Lord of the Rings, where there, I mean, Peter Jackson gave us huge expanses of our tiny little heroes running through these extremely beautiful landscapes that didn't take too much CGI to modify, because the 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 locations were just awesome, right? You get these helicopter views and drone shots of our heroes like scrambling over through plains and mountainsides and all this kind of stuff. And I think if we just tweak little things, if you say to a person desert, since we're talking about Dune and Desolation, sometimes people think of, oh well, I guess It's boring. It's just sand dunes, and we don't have to stop there. And most, as was mentioned before, most deserts actually aren't sandy. Most deserts are more barren. Just like a beach, right? You get a coastline. Every coastline is different. Some are more. First, you have temperatures, and there's tropics, and there's weather. And is it a sandy, white sandy beach? We even have in our world a black sand beach. Is it more swamp like? Here in the states, down off the coastlines of North South Carolina, Florida, um, Alabama, Louisiana. It's not sandy tropical beaches that you just like to lay in with sunglasses. It's something you have to navigate through, and it's like thick and murky and hides animals like snakes and frogs and mosquitoes and alligators, crocodiles and things. So even though our high concept may seem something simple, desert, jungle, mountains, ocean, coastline, tundra, there's still nuances we can play with. So then, as we zero in from this wide expanse of, hey, it's going to take you 3 weeks to get to the Arctic North in my world, but let's focus in on like 1 or 2 days about what you're doing and maybe a character's okay. Yeah, yeah. Listen, if you're a Floridian, they'll tell you, if you're one of these people that likes to walk around with those toy dogs, those pocket dogs, they're like, you might not want to walk near expanses of any kind of like water with any particular depth in it, because the alligators and snakes and things are like hiding back in there. I mean, it's a real thing that people's dogs have been snatched up by alligators. The little tiny dogs and cats and things pretty regularly, you know. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole division of people whose only job is to receive phone calls when neighbors are like, "Yeah, there's an alligator in our pool, or there's an alligator in that pond of water. Can you come get it, please?" Which kind of makes me wonder why we don't really have something like that in Dungeons and Dragons. We should make it. Anyway, so we have this wide expanse of like our intrepid heroes traveling through the landscape, and in many ways, like the idea of like rolling a random encounter is, I feel like this is the perfect place to do it as they go from one place to another, because this is the opportunity for you to lore dump your world onto your player characters. And when I say lore dumping, it's very difficult. Sometimes we spend too many hours developing our worlds with not enough time and interest for our players to learn about what the world is. And travel is a great opportunity to lore dump. Maybe they see things and hear things. They come across travelers. This is where our random encounters, no matter how randomness of a encounter you think you should have, is the opportunity. If the players are going along and they encounter a couple of trolls, what is it about those trolls that tells the players what this world is like? Like, are those trolls going back to Dune? Do those trolls shift the earth, and the sand starts to vibrate violently, and their feet start to sink into it, and the trolls slowly emerge out of the sand, and their skin is sandy and dirty, and they're able to, maybe their skin and maybe they have a shell on their back that allows them to hide in and out of the environment. Or maybe the trolls were imported here and they hate the desert, and they hate travelers just as much as they hate the desert, because somebody removed them from their jungle, and now they're out here in the desert and they're barely surviving and scraping by or something. I mean, that tells you about the encounter. Now, again, this is just a pet peeve of mine within the RPG community, TTRPG community, about random encounters, where some people fold their arms and harumph sticking out their bottom lip when when they talk about random encounters, because please tell me that I am not breaking up. Okay. Stand by. We're trying to restore him. If it takes too long, uh, okay, we should bet. We should be back. There we go. Dead Man says a desert troll could be really emancipated to symbolize their struggle to find food. Oh, hell's yes. Hell's yes. And not only that, one okay, does it sound like I'm promoting A5E? Yes, I am promoting the level up A5E because I was part of the design process, and I love the fact that this was included. Every single monster in the Monster Menagerie that's been released has encounter elements, things in and around the environment before you even meet the monster. And uh oh, am I going? Let's see. Let me reconnect here and reconnect. There we go. Yeah, yeah. Restream allows me to simulcast, and so my audio is getting punched out to Discord, and I'm being punched out to Facebook, you know, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. And so I imagine that I'm surprised I don't have more problems, but I'm spoiled having great connection issues, considering I don't have like high speed or any upgrades or anything like that. So, fingers crossed. Anyway, um, random encounters, I feel like, or travel encounters, and remember the word encounters doesn't mean combat. Yeah, I don't even think you can spell the word combat with the word encounter. I think we, much like experience and experience points, the word experience means learning something through your experiences, not necessarily killing things. Just like encounters don't mean combat, encounters mean having an encounter. And an encounter doesn't need to even be with a living thing. An encounter can be finding a magical grove, or seeing hallucinations on the hallucinations or mirages on the horizon, or finding those dead, desiccated bodies of trolls that the players may realize, whoa, dead trolls. A, we might come across trolls. B, this environment is so harsh that it could kill them, and fighting them with the the rib cage. I mean, yeah, rib cages sucked in and barely looking like the trolls maybe you're used to back in the rainforest that you came from, and having them look different here in this world. I think is awesome. And even in the movie Dune, with the sandworms and the spice and such, I mean, we're given a lot of information about the environment. We see sandstorms and the wind and the bright sunlight, and the fact that people have to walk around in still suits, distillation suits from their own sweat and moisture, so that they can, um, and of course, their urination and sweat and everything, that they have to consume it, and they can't waste not a drop of it, as well as the fact that we get a lot of other small little bits of information. For example, when the sandworms travel, the sand itself vibrates violently to make the sand almost liquid like, which is a real thing. You could take they take machines and vibrate the sand to allow like steel and concrete pylons to sink further into sand, so that you can build large structures on soft material. Also, the thumpers that are used, the thumpers are is sound, and we know that the sandworms are attracted to sound, and that kind of thing. And I love those little details, especially in using our adventure, that even limitations themselves become benefits within the world. Like, sandworms really remind us of purple worms in Dungeons and Dragons, and if they're blind, maybe they go by their tremor sense, their sound, and you can manipulate their activity by sound. Maybe a party member creates a big sound, like uses something that it amplifies their voice, or causes vibrations in the earth so that the other player characters maybe run. You could even guide maybe a giant purple worm at low levels. When the PCs are real fragile and crunchy, they might be able to manipulate that. So these are little details that, again, here we go with the lore dumping that organically you can get across to the players. Um, and hey, A underscored. So Fnerd says, I think people who dislike random encounters are used to those wildly random, old school random encounter tables that were independent of where you are. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you on that. They were like, it, they weren't created for your setting. They were just random tables. It was basically an alphabetical list of some monsters, and that was it. Anyway, he goes on to say, where it just felt like a time waste, and the game gave no guidelines for how to make them more interesting. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you on that. Like, if you, my feeling is a random encounter table, like any other tool we ever use in tabletop role playing game, should be the appropriate tool, right? I mean, you can use a wrench as a hammer, but that might not be the appropriate tool you need to put a nail into wood, right? Maybe you need to go get an actual hammer. And if that means finding the most appropriate tool you can, like maybe like, for example, right now you can, use your Google Foo and look up random encounter tables. There's whole places dedicated to nothing but random tables. And you could find ones that either are extremely appropriate to your world, like I need some jungle tables, or rainforest, or coastline, or deep ocean, or vacuum of space. Hey, I'm on an astral plane. This random table doesn't work. My players are planeswalkers. What kind of encounter do I have? And I'm sure you can modify them. Also, listen, we're brilliant. most most people are smarter than we give ourselves credit for. Take those random tables that don't fit and make them fit. Band of orcs. What would a band of orcs in the desert look like? Oh, okay. Here's what they would be doing. When we first saw Star Wars, and they land on the planet Tatooine, and this Tatooine, yet another desert planet, right? And we have Jawas, and we have sand crawlers, and we have uh, so on and so forth. All these people living on this desert world. Maybe it behooves us to, like, go, what would trolls in the desert be like? And Dead Man an excellent example of that. Yep. Uh, Dead Man brings up the deck of, the deck of random encounters, a 2E supplement. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a number of indie press places that have done, like, the uh, deck of many. I believe they're actually called deck of many things, that have done decks of many fill in the blanks most recently, as well as the fact that, like, I'm a dice fanatic, and I can't reach it right now. Anyway, I'm a dice fanatic, and like, I've got random encounter dice that come up with, like, random NPCs, random locations, random uh, environmental and dungeon aspects and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. Anyway, previous to Dead Man says, like, throwing dynamite, uh, like was done in the early Tremors movies. Yep, throw the dynamite and makes the monsters go somewhere else. Also, it there's nothing limiting us from changing how it is that we incorporate all the things that we have for our world into our world. Going back to Dune, right? If we have burrowing monsters, first of all, they probably, in many ways, if they burrow, they either have no eyes at all, and they operate solely on vibrations and sound. They might have eyes, but that's not their primary method of viewing something, like a mole or some other burrowing animal and whatnot. So maybe they use sound, but they have eyes, but they're really only useful in the dark. And so they probably just have flaps or something like that. They could just be completely blind, like they have eyes, they're just milky white and they don't see at all. And so there's many other ways we can incorporate. And so then that changes the dynamic of the game, right? Well, my illusionist character is not going to fool a purple worm that has no eyes. But if I make an illusion of sound or create sound in some kind of way, maybe the bard becomes the one that shines instead of my character who can create holograms or something. And that might not be the quote unquote normal way of interacting in the world, but it might be emblematic of interacting with the world in this particular location. It's like it's the complaints about dark vision, right? And you guys know my opinion about dark vision. It's the complaint I have is, well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to create a visual obscurement? Because there's plenty of things that stop vision of all types: smoke, mist, fog, uh, 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 tapestries, uh, uh, anything from sandstorms to all kinds of stuff that are particulates in the air. Dark vision can't get through that stuff. Or are you just worried about darkness itself? Right? Yeah, dark vision gets through darkness, but it doesn't pierce choking smoke or poison clouds or fog or smoke or sand or blizzards, things like that, right? So, and then there's all kinds of other things like dark vision doesn't pierce through a dense jungle either. Hmm. Now, when we zero in, when we zero in further with our heroes, because we haven't even done that part. So we are the cinematographers of our own world, and we zero in on our characters, what they're doing, how they're doing it in our world, whether they're setting up camp or you've got the proverbial I'm sitting on a stone sharpening my sword, and you have the other character praying in the corner or something. We can use those moments to we have our role playing moments. Let's enjoy the moment when we, as the narrator or dungeon master, and our players are sitting around a campfire talking with each other. And if you're doing it in game and they're not bothered with the idea that this part of the adventure, nothing, we didn't have any die rolls because we were role playing, don't think of that as a loss. That's actually awesome. That's actually awesome. But here's another thing as well. We we unfortunately have atrophied muscles that we haven't exercised to make our environment just as interactive as it is when we start fighting our monsters. So, even though the rules are exactly the same, so when we fight monsters, we take usually in a D20 system. Doesn't really matter what the system is. We take some dice, we roll those dice, success or failure, and then usually after that we adjudicate what happens afterwards. Well, if you hit something with a weapon, we grab some more dice, and then that weapon or spell or effect has some other things to it. Oh, it does slashing damage, and or I stun that creature, or I restrain it, or it falls backwards, plus it suffers 16 points of necrotic damage or something like that. The same thing can happen if we release our minds from of how static our mechanics are. The same thing can happen in the environment. Let's go back to our trusty common rope bridge. Love myself some rope bridging because as much of a trope as a rope bridge is, it's still cool, right? There's just so many things that can happen on rope bridges. And this is where like the puzzle riddle concept comes in, where you create a problem without a specific solution. If there's a raging river and there's a rope bridge across it or something, do the players take their 5 tons of gold that they snatched out of that last adventure and roll the wagon simply across the bridge? Well, maybe not. Maybe they have to take it apart and in small amounts. If you have this long rope bridge, do you send one person across at a time, or do you wait for somebody to get to the middle part and inspect it first, and then maybe two or three more people go across? Um, what kind of skill challenges do you want in your game to navigate from one place to another? And going across like a frozen lake or a rope bridge or traveling through a dense jungle or climbing up a huge cliffside, or is it a number of athletics checks? Will you allow your players to use other skills, like maybe someone is moving ahead and they're navigating, pointing out, hey, I'm a expert climber, mountain climber. I'm going to point ahead to my fellow teammates where they should go to help them out. Oh, okay. Well, then maybe you're giving someone the wizard to help action who's never left the library or something. Um, and then what happens if they succeed and what happens if they fail? I think sometimes we understand what failure looks like. Climb a cliff, fail a climbing check, an athletics check, you fall to your death, right? But we don't often have nuance in that with a success and or failure. So, what if somebody gets a success or failure? What if somebody has a critical success or critical failure? Do you Is your critical failure falling to your death, or do you drop an important item? Or do you only drop down a specified amount of distance? Like, oh, there's 30 feet of rope attached to me, and my ally, I fall, maybe they have to make a strength check to keep themselves from getting pulled off the rock for two people to start falling or whatever. And as you see in my head, what I'm doing is I'm starting to build a series of circumstances. And like I said, we are creative individuals. We try to create creative combat, but we can actually have creative exploration as well. Same thing with going through any kind of expanse. We're going through the desert. Well, standing at the top of a very loose sand dune might not be safe. Maybe the sand dune will collapse in on itself, or we go across salt flats, or there's quicksand, or there's a rocky terrain with, rocks perched, precariously above the player characters as they navigate through a maze of pillars and plateaus and mesas and other things. Maybe there's sweeping dust devils that are sweeping through the valley, or maybe there's confusing sounds and sounds ricocheting off the walls, and it's messing with their navigation or whatnot. Or maybe it's safer for the players to get to the top of the plateaus and navigate that way, but they have to jump from crevice to crevice, even though jumping across it might be a short distance. Looking down, it might be very tall, or it might not even be fall to your death. It might be fall and get jammed in between two large expanses of rock or something. And so again, just use our creativity. Now, of course, what happens when going across rope bridges or raging rivers and putting a rope across a raging river and trying to hold on and not get swept away, or hacking through a dense jungle, and then you come across, I don't know, uh, muddy hillsides, and you're trying to climb up the muddy hillside or something like that, that many monsters and adversaries are going to want to uh, in, to cause conflict when your players are at their weakest. And a lot of times, circumstances, any monster worth its salt, from animal intelligence all the way up to brilliance, is going to want to use anything at their disposal to get an advantage. That individual who walks around the corner at midnight or later and walks down a dark alley is going to get robbed. Why? Because that person is going to try to look for the person at their weakest. Are they by themselves? Are they drunk or high? Are they in unfamiliar territory? Do they act? Are they a mark? Right? And lots of animals hunt that way. When animals hunt animals in a large herd, what do they look for? They look for the tired, the young, the lost, the ones at the very end. They're going to go after them uh, first. Those predators are going to go after the ones that fall off or tired or get lost or separated by the environment. And why wouldn't our adversaries do the same thing? Kobolds aren't the master trap makers that they aren't the only ones that use their environment. I go back to my example of sharks and alligators. It's not just that sharks and alligators are dangerous. It's sharks and alligators are dangerous because of the environment that they're in. So you get bit by a shark, it don't just hurt, it's bleeding and grappled and drowning And it's all that stuff put. Same thing with alligators, right? It's not only did it grab my leg, it's going to pull me down into dank waters, which unfortunately, maybe my party won't be able to see me, i.e., mechanically they might not be able to target me. Pulls me down, starts to barrel roll, and tries to rip my foot off. Here I am trying to scramble and kill this thing while I'm trying to hold my breath, and so on and so forth. So these things can stack on top of each other, and I love it. Um, Lastly, when I before we zero in on a lot more of this the combat portions, and we'll talk about Dune and Desolation in a minute, and open landscapes of nothing actually have a lot to offer for our descriptive purposes. One of the things about these like random encounters and such is the fact that in the olden days of video gaming, a lot of times if you turn the corner, there would be a monster or some kind of enemy or something waiting there. And if you went back around the corner out of vision and walked back into the corner again, the monster would be standing exactly where it was the very first time you saw it before, as if nothing happened, as if it went to reset itself. And these are tabletop role playing games. What the hell is the monster or beasts or adversaries doing out there? Like when bandits go after our player characters on the road, well, why? Like, are they hungry? Are they greedy? Do they have some kind of motivation? Do we find our monsters starving or wounded or diseased or held in a pit trap or uh lost their young and searching for their younglings, or are do the PCs come across the younglings and mama and daddy is out there looking for them? Maybe the player characters come across some of these animals during mating season, or they are patrolling their territory and they just want to scare our adventurers off. Maybe they're just hunting and they really don't even want to have a fight with the adventurers, but they're hunting and eating something else. Um, Maybe along with very young. Maybe this animal is very old and has been kicked away from its group, and it's out there just wandering around before it falls down and dies on its own. Or maybe it's looking for its haven or trying to construct a new one, like creating a dam or a nest or something, right? And these are just animalistic behaviors. What about intelligent creatures? Are they lost? Are they making a map following something? Are they looking for a magical grove or treasure or escaped slaves? Are they spread out? Is this a scouting party? Yeah, and hell's yeah, right? Deadman says owlbear mating season is a thing according to the monster manual. Yeah, yeah, or monstrous menagerie. No, but really though, what about mating season or migratory season? Uh, all these monsters, creatures, or something. Remember, I don't know if you guys remember. I'm old enough to remember the old Dragon magazine, and these were translated later on, but I remember the original Dragon magazines. I loved the ecology sections, and they would take a tried and true monster, one that we kind of went, yawn, we've seen goblins before, yeah, yawn, we've seen basilisks before, whatever, and they would do an ecology of these monsters. Now, mind you, some of the ecologies were so deep in the woods, you're kind of rolling your eyes like, whatever, like, they really tried to get the Animal Planet, Jacques Cousteau, tried to give it that tried and true. This monster really exists in this real world kind of thing. You don't have to go that deep, but if the players never encountered this thing, what would it be doing? Do basilisks randomly turn things to stone? Does it eat them? Do basilisk eggs, are they like stone? Why, what in your world are they doing? Like, do they eat gemstones or something? Or is this a side effect of something else? Do they hibernate? Do they, uh, uh, are they lizard like, and do they lay on hot rocks or something like that because they're cold blooded creatures? What do other predators and prey around them, how do they react? Like maybe the player characters see birds flying for dear life to get the hell out of the woodlands. And when the players are like, I'm a ranger, why did the birds escape? There must be some kind of predator around here, that kind of thing. So yeah, you don't have to get too deep in the woods, but making your world feel like it's alive, that the PCs come across bandits that have already been attacked, and they're trying to find some kind of way to heal their banditry members. And yes, they're evil, stereotypically evil. We're going to rob you on the road, but they might also be desperate. Yeah, we're going to rob you on the road because the local constabulary has been murdering us one by one, taking us out, and all we want to do is just live on our own. And they're trying to kill us, but they claim we're living on the we're living in the Grand Duchy's land, but that land belonged to us before they ever moved here. And guess what? Now you've got a story. So, lastly, talking about Dune and nobles and going out there into the wild and whatnot, we when we focus in on our player characters, like the Dune movie, as portrayed in the Dune movie, we had a situation where dangerous sandworms were coming close and whatnot, and there was literally no way any of these characters would ever be able to fight, roll initiative, fight a sandworm. Like, yeah, that's not going to happen, right? It will win, and it will crush you, and you will die, right? You better run for the hills. And so instead, they had other ways of dealing with it, going back to the thumpers, going back to um, the character in the movie where Liet Hines, the professor was smashing the ground and thumping the ground, like, yeah, come on, you think you murdered me, but this sandworm is going to swallow all of us, and I can't wait, right? And there's, of course, there's the idea of the thopters flying overhead and the sandstorms coming in, and the ground shifting under people's feet and whatnot. And of course, keeping track of supplies. How much water do you have? Can you survive in excuse me, the direct sunlight, or is there some kind of shelter that you need to take, like our characters took shelter? I apologize. Mm, Throat is getting a little bit rough. So, and then of course having all of those have mechanical effects. Yes, in classic Dungeons and Dragons, some of the mechanical effects are boring, difficult terrain, right? Maybe there's other mechanical effects happening within the initiative order that you want to have happen. Necrotic lightning bolts happening on initiative 12. Maybe there's falling rocks or sweeping dust devils blinding our player characters. Maybe the sand is shifting so much that beneath their feet, that randomly their feet shift down and they have to literally pull their thighs out of the sand to try to walk. That might require strength saving throws or acrobatics checks or something so that they don't get stuffed into the sand. Maybe sand or rock or loose gravel will fall down and pin someone to the ground. And this could happen if the environment is neutral. These things could happen to their adversaries as well as the player characters. And maybe the player characters take advantage of that. Hey, could I if I do a tactical retreat, maybe those the sand orcs are going to move into the region that's very dangerous, and then somebody else can use something to cause the sand to tumble down on top of them or something like that. Or the dust devil is sweeping through the valley, between the pillars of rock. I'm going to stand in a particular location so that the rocks can tumble down on them, or the dust devil will come by and blind them, so that I can, get into a higher position and hide away from them or something like that. I would love a player to use and abuse the environment, and it could be scary. It could be scary if we don't know what's going to happen, but maybe that makes things more exciting for us as creators. Lastly, I will say, when it comes to desolate and um, death-filled, dangerous, open expanses of a world, like we love our accursed deserts, we love our salt flats, we love our dead expanses. Are there things that can happen out there? Of course there are. First of all, much as detailed in advanced fifth edition, the we could have world events, meaning like world traits or elements. Like we don't have to reserve planar travel to have an effect on the environment, full effect on the environment. What I mean by that is, traveling through the planes of existence. Someone says, "I'm going to go to the plane of fire." Well, we all know the plane of fire is going to be hot and it's going to burn you, burn you to death. And or we're going to go to the underwater. Well, that means you're going to have to either hold your breath or find some method of having air with you for a long extended period of time, or water breathing, right? But maybe our world or sections of our world are altered. Maybe if you go through a place where death is so ingrained in the world, it's like a desecrated location where even the hardiest adventurers never come back. Yep, yep. Dead Man says Athos, Dark Sun's Athos was a desert planet. Yep, and guess what? It had a drain on resources. It was hard to find food and water. It was hard to find shelter. We knew that for example, maybe by traveling to through different regions, and you can tell your players this, right? When you travel to this region, if you die, anything that's dead comes back as an undead creature, like roll a d12 that many hours later. Oh, you have a box set. You know what? I do not have the boxed set, but I still have my Dark Sun modules. Like the maps, the one of the things I think was incredible about Dark Sun that I wish some more creators would go back to doing was that I remember unfolding the maps. I think I've had at least three modules. They were called modules, not adventure paths, but back in the day when they were called modules, I could open up my maps, lay them out, and the maps would not only fit together, but some of them would overlay on top of each other. And some were zoomed in bits and pieces, and some were zoomed out. So like there would be some like outcropping on the edge of one map, and then come to find out another adventure would actually have a zoomed in version of that and stuff. So I missed that part. And I think there was someone that came up with something called Kaladar Kalishadar or something, where each adventure was centered somewhere on the map and they all interlinked together and overlaid on top of each other. I can't remember, but anyway, I think that would be awesome. I still have a dream of putting out a series of landscape maps that are modified by season and or environment, like a winter map, a summer map, a high tide map, low tide map, a I don't know, a map when during earthquake season, another map during tsunami hurricane season. Like I'm that's one of my dreams, like to have a map, but then the map can the dungeon master or narrator or whoever game master could take each map and pick them up based on the seasonal changes or environmental changes. They don't need to be seasonal. It could be in world, it could be arcane, it could be maybe a world has 7 different seasons that we don't have on this planet. But I think that would just be awesome. Multiple moons, and if your world even has a planet, maybe it's just one big flat plane or something like that would be pretty awesome. But um, yeah, Dark Sun itself has rules. Hey, you go to Dark Sun. And I think that the reason why Dark Sun hasn't been released by fifth edition, and I think we can all agree that to to properly embrace Dark Sun, and I'm not talking about psionics, that's a whole other problem, issue, is the survivalist aspect of Dark Sun would require a major overhaul of how baseline fifth edition operates. Um, there would there should be no easy button for survival in Dark Sun. It should be scrambling for food and water, which means that they're going to have to go through and curate through spells. Hey, tiny hut, purify food and water, create food and water, good berry, so on. Either doesn't exist, or if it does, it's so rare and or valuable that it becomes an adventure unto itself. I still remember a low level adventure. I think it was first through third or second through fifth or something. There was a low level adventure called All That Glitters, and it was this. I mean, took place in Greyhawk, and you had to go through the Barrier Peak Mountains to get to the other side. And this was just before Dark Sun was created, because you were able to get through the other side of the Barrier Peak Mountains on the southwestern part of the map, and it wasn't even called Dark Sun at the time. And then you get to the other side, and it was called All That Glitters because it was this vast treasure. And when the players finally, spoiler alert, once you find the treasure, you come to find out it was a bottle of ever. What's the name of that magic item that where ever flowing bottle of it, I can't remember the bottle that can create water and ever flowing water or something like that. It has a particular name, or used to have a particular name, but that was the big treasure at the end of the adventure. It wasn't gold or like you know magic items and armor and weapons and all that kind. It was dragons and stuff. It wasn't that wasn't what was at the end of it. The actual treasure, because you were in this vast desert, was this bottle of ever flowing water. And I was just like, that is so cool. Sure, the player characters might be going like, "Dope! Oh, this is stupid," but then you realize like all the details that led up to it, the hubris of the map you were following from the last adventurers. Yeah, that what you consider something valuable is not valuable in this world. So um the same thing could be done for our desolate locations here as well, when you have open expanses and no food and no water, and explain to the characters, even if this is something like a one-off in your world, where you tell players like, you know what, I understand that you have the tiny hut spell, Leomund's decanter of endless water. There it is, the decanter of endless water. Ah, oh man, yes. It had like three versions of it. I think two or three functions. There was I once had a location where the function which allows it to produce water eternally actually changed the landscape over hundreds of years. It is just flooding this region. Anyway, but yeah, there's a command word where it just constantly floods water. You could actually spray the water at people and stuff like that. Uh, Pretty interesting. Anyway, the decanter of endless water. I'm gonna leave it right there. Anyway, the uh, I will say, just to wrap this up, that if we do a one-off, either through arcana checks, history checks, survival, nature checks, religion, even, that to let the players know, hey, guess what? If you go to this region, the rules are going to change. Maybe death saving throws change, or how long it takes to heal. Maybe instead of short rest being an hour, maybe you double or triple those events. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, they have things like healing requires a healer's kit. Maybe that's an effect. Like you're going through a jungle and the players are like, well, I'm just going to take a short rest or a long rest and heal my hit points. And you're like, you've got open wounds and they're probably going to get infected by all the biological ephemera that's around here, like blood sucking beetles and bacteria and things like that. In this particular region, you got to clean your wounds. You're going to have to stop and bandage everything up. You're going to have to all that. You're going to have to, in order to heal properly, you're going to have to take these steps. Maybe you do other things, like for example, maybe you have to death. We've heard of death saving throws having a difference. There, maybe exhaustion is a big thing. Exhaustion is pretty brutal in fifth edition. Maybe acquiring exhaustion becomes a thing. Um, Both those of us at Critical Hit Publishing came up with a despair mechanic. In Level Up A5E, there's a strife mechanic, a fatigue and strife mechanic. Maybe there's mental exhaustion that runs alongside physical exhaustion. Maybe there are lingering injuries and you want to use some lingering injuries tables. Maybe how magic works has been altered. Maybe there's some kind of scourge. Come up with some kind of cool name. Maybe it's a magical scourge where magic doesn't work correctly. And going through this region, drain spell levels or something. Like you could come up with any kind of rules you want for your world, and maybe these are one-offs based on each region. So maybe your desolate region is like, hey, if you want to cross this, you're going to have to pack food and water. You're going to have to make sure you navigate correctly because it's the classic people have traveled here, but they've never come back. Let's be honest. Most of us adventuring types and player characters and stuff, we go, sure, the NPCs didn't survive, but of course this is based around the level of my character, right? It's like, nah, that's not necessarily. Deadman says, for the decanter of endless water, a stream produces 1 gallon of water, a fountain produces 5 gallons of water, and a geyser produces 30 gallons of water that gushes forth in a geyser 30 feet long and 1 foot wide. Those stats are from 5e. The 2e version was created that much water each round. Yep, the geyser created that each round, and it didn't stop until you said the command word to turn it off. I still like some of the 5e. Excuse me. I still like some of the 2e magic items. Some of them were pretty gonzo, and some of those magic items were brought back in fifth in back in A5e in the level up. Some of those gonzo magic items were brought back because you go, oh, decanter of endless water, that's not a big deal. And then you go, wait a minute, it can. And this I'm talking about the old version, and you could create a geyser of water constantly, and it never stops. Yeah, hell's yeah. Wayne's like, yeah, the most important command would be the one that produces the beer. Hell's yes, hell's yes. That came up yesterday. We were talking about. I was talking with Marquise Hardis. He's the creator of Scavenger, and we did a little bit of an interview. Marquise and I are always orbiting the same. We've been orbiting the same gravitational pull and never confronting each other, and we got an opportunity to do that, and it was pretty interesting. Like we have to do a talk about Wayne. I know you're being funny, but you're not, in the sense that like beer, alcohol is so important to culture and the development of society. It is so important. It Alcohol is like one of those things that has become a staple amongst the majority of cultures throughout time and still is. I mean, people make alcohol in prison toilets. People are judged by their knowledge of alcohol. When humanity travels from one place to another, what do? They On a sailing ship, they break champagne across the bow of a ship. What happens when you succeed in something? Let's open up a bottle of champagne and celebrate. What's the first thing somebody creates? Let's get some yeast. Let's get to where we're going and take an alien plant and try to get some yeast out of the sugars of this alien plant that we shouldn't be doing, but we're going to do it anyway, right? TA says, does that mean one that creates vodka or whiskey would also be able to be used for fire as well as the intoxication? Hell's yes. Hell yeah. But you know what? Let's do a grain and grape. We're going to do a grain and grape episode, or at least one, if not more. We're going to do a grain and graper where we talk about not only kinds of alcohols but like the importance of them. Yep, Thomas Anderson says that, yeah, the vodka would be also useful for sterilization, perfectly due to lack of anything but alcohol and water. Even though whiskey solves that issue too, and well, back in the old days, grog was an important thing because you could not keep water purified on like sailing vessels, and you would travel long distances, and you weren't sure if the water you would drink, the natural water spring you would drink, had some contaminants in it. So adding alcohol to water was a thing. And for what was it, what's the there's a what's the name of it, history simplified. There's a YouTube channel that does like history simplified and does very sarcastic animated shorts. And it's not really short; it's like a half hour or longer, and it talks about prohibition in the United States and how people for who were just perpetually drunk for generations. Yeah, Dead Man's like, yep, grog. Yep, there was a magic item in 2E Spelljammer that created limitless grog. Gotta have that grog, keep everybody pacified. Well, you would need it for travel too. Alcohol, Wayne says alcohol is so much a part of us. We separate it from other drugs, even though it is the world's main drug. It sure is. I mean, it, let's think about how many things happen in and around alcohol, alcohol consumption, for good or bad, right? Like we much much like how we use food and meals as a method of negotiation. Hey, let's all sit down and have a meal together. Family, friends, negotiating with enemies, negotiating with allies. We do it around mealtime. But even without that, we do have drink time. Hey, let's share a drink. And even with people who can't communicate with each other, the I drink first and you drink out of the same cup is like a method to gain trust. How many? Let's be honest. The forefathers of the United States that gave us the Constitution and all of our freedoms probably were a bit drunk and or high at the time that they did it. Let's be honest with ourselves. They did this while drinking, and not saying they weren't brilliant. I'm saying they were also probably drunk as well. Yeah, is it oversimplified? Yeah, Wayne, he says, I think Oversimplified is the YouTube history channel you're thinking of. Yep. There's a great one that talks about the age of prohibition and how people were drunk and they would keep and how they kept getting so drunk that the women were just like, what the hell? I don't men just keep getting drunk. They kept going to these men's clubs before like bars or taverns and things like that, or manipulations thereof. And man, we have so many categories. It's funny because I wonder how many hundreds of thousands of things people have tried to make into an alcohol that didn't succeed by the time we figured out what kind of things that had sugars that could break down that became alcohol in the first place. Because I have a list of like we could do a real quick list of let me do a Google search here because I normally don't do this. List of organics that can produce alcoholic beverages. Let's see if we can come up with a giant ass list. No, no, no. I want not Kemp. Oh no, it didn't give me one. Yeah, it's not. And even Wikipedia is probably not going to do that. I want like. Yeah, it's not. I can't get it real quick. Sorry about that, guys. I was going to put one up. I mean, what I mean is, I'm thinking of like wheat, rice, potatoes, of course, sugar cane, that goes on and on and on because you have variations of sugars in and amongst different types of wheat and potatoes and rice and sugar cane and so on. But I mean, there's so many other. I mean, we have wines made out of like fruits and wines made out of different types of vegetable matter and seeds and roots and it goes on and on and on. Honey and I mean and how it's produced. So it's so great. It's so awesome. We should do that. We've got to do it. T is like, that would also ruin the use of it for freshwater while at sea, since it would pull from the ocean. Yes, I don't know how sailors did they. I literally have no idea. Like, was can alcohol kill the salt content in ocean water, or did they have to travel with fresh water and put alcohol in it? I don't know. Oh, yes, yes, yes. He says, but pull, I mean it replicates a huge amount endlessly until it ends. You mean the decanter of endless water? My world has a vast ocean, and the PCs are like, Oh, it's a water world. Cool, great. I'll be an aquatic elf and I'll be a mer person. And come to find out at the end of the adventure, they're like, at the bottom of the sea, there's one decanter spewing water. And the PCs are like, wait, and there's a piece of parchment uh, taped to the edge of it. I'm going to read the command word. You read the command word, and suddenly the ocean stops and the water stops producing it. And they're like, don't. It was a decanter of endless water this entire time. Sure was. Although it doesn't make the water go away, it would be kind of funny. Like, how I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to turn it on, leave it in put it inside of somebody's like bag of holding or portable hole, dump it inside and leave. Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, TA says salt is a solid, so no. And actually, dry salt can be used to extract the last bit of water from alcohol to purify it. Did not know that. Yeah, I know salt is a solid. I wasn't sure about the salt content. Like, how is it high enough that there's no way to extract it, or is there a way to like boil it off, or I don't know. I didn't think so, but I wasn't sure. Sailors traveled with barrels of grog and added rainwater to stay hydrated. Okay, rainwater, and I bet there's a way to even do oh condensation. You take you uh you take a barrel or a jug or something, you put over top of it a material that sags in the middle, and then the condensation of it produces condensation causes moisture to rise up to the material that collects on the bottom surface of the, like, say, cheesecloth, and then causes it to drip down in the middle of it. So yeah, rainwater. Yeah, yep. Rainwater is basically distilled water, so that is a good option when it does rain to gather what you can for sure. Alcohol can be used. TA goes on to say alcohol could be used on fresh water that is going stagnant to purify it, though. Yeah, and we do have, I mean, today we have methods of creating our own purification system. What do you take, like um sand and charcoal, sand and carbon, and you make layers of it, and then you use like a filtering mechanism like cheesecloth or something like that as well to get particulates out of it. Yes, for sale. I didn't know in the ancient days whether you could do that, like, because alcohol's got a lot of uses, cleaning wounds and purifying things. I wasn't sure if it could kill the the salt and salt water. Because you don't want to drink. You really don't want to drink poisonous salt water and other stagnant waters as well. But that's actually kind of cool. We have to do a grain and graper, because I don't. I listen. I'm an armchair person. I don't know anything about wines and beers and things like that. But it is extremely important for our culture. So maybe put it over in the game. TA says yes, salt can be left behind in a glass filter when using electricity to force the water through in reverse osmosis. I remember seeing a show about that, using electricity in reverse osmosis to get the pure particulates out. I didn't remember. I couldn't remember how it's done. Hey, the end of the world. I'm going to find you guys. World, the apocalypse. Yeah, yeah. Getting clean water and seeds and stuff like that. I think I'm going to turn this channel into a prepper channel. Deadman says I put a link in the Discord of 10 things that can be grown and brewed into alcohol. All right, what do we got here? There we go. Boom. 10 foods you can grow to make alcohol. There we go. Potatoes, beets. Forgot about beets. Beets have been used for have high sugar content. Berries, apples, grapes, rice, corn. Why did I forget corn? And there's so many different versions of corn out there. Moonshine, dandelion. I've heard of dandelion wine. Actual sugar, prickly pear, cactus, hops. Disclaimer: the information contained in this article is for entertainment purposes only. Distilling your own alcohol is illegal in most countries. Yeah, yeah. As far as home brewing and winemaking are concerned, please check your local and state laws before proceeding. Yep, yeah. And of course, each of these has their own. Like, if you just say berries, oh my god, well, what kind of berries? Where are they? Much like grapes, right? Grapes are based on the breed of the grape, where the grapes are grown, the yield of those grapes. Yeah, absolutely. Rice is another one that's a big one. Corn and maize are interesting, so you can get like hundreds of different types as well. We are as a culture obsessed with alcohol. Oh man. Oh, let me get TA's comments here. As our one of our co-hosts. Sorry, Wayne's like a nice 24 ouncer did be fine for Dune Tuesday night. Hells yeah. Yeah. TA says they do this near oceans and dump the intensely salty brine back in the ocean that sinks due to being heavy. Okay. And kills everything on the bottom of the ocean. I did not know that. Adventurers in D&D settings are the ultimate, yeah, would be the ultimate preppers. Yep. Hells yeah. D&D preppers waiting for the apocalypse. Yeah, anything with sugar, or if you have a weak acid like vinegar to break down starch into sugar. I think the issue would be it, finding an unfamiliar plant organic and finding out whether it has enough sugars to do it. And I guarantee you, we've probably taken everything. TA says yes. There are often also rules for denaturing denaturing it if you are brewing and purifying it for energy, like running equipment, so it can't be drank without dying. Oh, yeah, like people who try to and have suffered and killed themselves by drinking pure alcohol. Yeah, not a smart thing. All right, guys, we'll get into this tomorrow as well. Yeah, this thought I talk about exploration. You guys know Third Pillar Thursday. This is what we always talk about. Thanks very much for that. Of course, there is a video of the interview I did last night. Please check that out as well. Thank you very much for the people who stopped by to see that. It was at a different time. It was recorded and broadcast at like 9 p.m. my time yesterday, Eastern Standard, EST EDT time. So menthol alcohol, yeah, yeah. That doesn't make. Listen, I've heard of people drinking. Um, oh, what is it? Um, I was about to say perfume and cologne. I've heard of people who are addicted to alcohol so much they try to drink colognes and stuff like that. It's crazy. That's wild. That is very much suffering from alcoholism as a disease. Ooh. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. If this is the kind of content you guys like, talking about getting drunk in the desert. Uh, hey, listen, Wade. That's the problem with alcohol, right? Is that the conversation was progressing as desired until someone brought up the alcohol. Hey, kind of brings up the point, right? Kind of brings up the point. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. maybe when we bring up our grain and grape episodes, the idea that we go off the handle and get a little squirrely might actually be part and parcel of the conversation itself. So anyway, guys, bring your favorite drinks, and hopefully that'll be a thing. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. And again, if this is the kind of content you want, people who talk randomly about getting drunk at the end of an episode about Dune, uh, tangentially, it kind of deals with the same thing, spice. Please like, share, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Anyway, oh man. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. I see what you said, Tia. Yeah. Yes, it's even worse when alcohol is actually introduced into a setting. Yeah. All getting drunk, like, let's roll some dice. that that would be a very interesting live play. Actual play, yeah. But what did you say? Yep, there's something about the function of the menthol molecule that makes it hard for the body to process and push it out of your system. That's why meth is a 24-hour damaging drug. Okay, I'm going to bring up one last thing before we get out of here, and that is, do you guys remember the old show A Thousand Ways to Die? It came on the old defunct Spike network for a short time, and there was one where, for some reason, a guy couldn't drink. I guess he had his like jaw wired shut or something like that, and he asked his wife to force alcohol up his anus, and he died because of the alcohol permeating the membranes in his lower bowels and bladder. So it was just crazy. I was like, "What? Ow!" Please, one of you guys, please look that up. Please find that. Hey, AD, if you can find that, put that in the Discord. That is nasty. I remember that episode. I was like, because they put animatics and dramatizations with it, and it was so hilarious. Anyway, guys, have a great one as we leave here, talking about Dune and anal insertions of pure alcohol.